We're going to go from something that's very specific, opportunity zones, and an important thing for our communities, especially here in the Central Valley, but throughout California. And we're going to dive into a little bit of a broader session that also has pockets of specificity. So right now we are moving into the area of county workforce development and training. So how do counties address workforce needs and provide advancement opportunities for their diverse populations? I'm going to introduce the panelists here in a minute. We have 4 great panelists that are going to go into a variety of topics. I do want to share a couple things. This, as we all know, is one of the biggest issues we face in our communities. And the this that I refer to is the education jobs nexus. The fact that there's so much education in a big swarm on one side and so much jobs and needs on the other side. And what we have realized is with generational shifts going on over the past 20 to 30 years is that they are not matching. So what do you get? You get situations like we were just talking about in San Joaquin Valley where you have brain drain. All of your kids are going to schools outside, UCLA, other places on the coast. And they don't come back because the skills that they're picking up in college aren't preparing them for the jobs that might be back in the Central Valley. What you have is in a place like Sonoma County, not in the Central Valley, but an issue where people are going through education, then they can't afford to live in the area that they live. They have highly trained minds and degrees in psychology and other things, and then they come back and they need to try and get a job, and all there is skilled positions with technical things ahead of you, right? So for me, this is really an important one because there is no quick fix to it. It's deep-seated. It's something that you actually do have to get into the upstream area. You have to create a jobs nexus. So I just want to say a couple things is that even though I'm not from the Central Valley, I come down here and what I see is a lot of excitement and a lot of opportunity. I spend a lot of my time in a coastal community that has huge issues with NIMBYs and a desire to compress and stop growth in a lot of different ways. A true desire to have our places stay stationary in time. I really do feel that there's a huge opportunity for you all if we can figure out a way to work with the state, especially to make sure that we focus on the Central Valley and the Inland Empire as the next great investment into California. Not just the coasts, not just the populous areas, but we all know what this is. As Buddy Mendez, I've heard him say a couple times, and I guess you reminded your colleagues on the Board of Supervisors at one point, you looked around him and said, "We're an urban county. What the? You got 1 million people plus in this area, you got a ton of employees. I mean, who in this world would, outside of a coalition, call Fresno an urban county?" That's San Francisco and that's Los Angeles. That's what everyone thinks. But the reality is that you look at the population, you look at the demand, you look at the supply, and you look at the opportunities that you have in land use management. It's super exciting to be here and talk to you guys. So I look forward to seeing what comes next. I do want to say for the part of Sonoma County, what we've done is we are one of the first counties that invested in CTE, Career Technical Education, started about 5-6 years ago, and going into our local schools with the Sonoma County Office of Education and basically paying stipends to have programs go into those areas that did job shadowing, that did skills, job nexus, and other things. We have built that post-fire in our area into a construction corps with $2 to $3 million of investment, training students, getting them out into the field. And what we're finding is nobody is occupying this space. Everybody is still talking about jurisdictions. So that's why we're here today, to not talk about jurisdiction, to talk about shared prosperity, but to get their shared responsibility. So with that being said, I'm going to pass it over first to Pete Weber. Pete is a friend, a colleague. We work together on California Forward. He is the former executive committee chair of the California Partnership for the San Joaquin Valley. Pete was a former corporate executive for a Fortune 500 company. That's what I'm reading here. Pete retired in 2001 and dedicated himself to the community and economic development activities in his and your Central Valley. He's the co-chair of California Forward, which he's going to talk a little bit about some of the Fresno opportunities and Central Valley opportunities coming up later this year through that group. Those of you who do not know what California Forward is, it is a think action tank, I would call it, out of Sacramento with a lot of civic and nonprofit and private institutions participating. It has a very strong place in the current administration, with the former co-chair now being Lenny Mendonça, being the head of GoBiz, the Governor's Office of Business and Development. There's a lot of the playbook that's been developed by California Forward with the input from Pete and others over the years that's going into that economic development plan. So what I've asked Pete to do is to do two things. One is give you a hint and invite you to what's to be the California Economic Summit here in Fresno later this year, and invite you to a way that you can participate, not just showing up, but in leading towards what it is, and how we can take whatever that is and play it into the administration going forward. On the other side, Pete's going to then go directly into his pride and joy and what he's done here with workforce development, and it's just very impressive, and it's a pleasure to have you, Pete. Thank you for joining us. Jump in, sir.
Thank you, James. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, see a lot of familiar faces. I want to give you a statewide perspective on this issue of workforce development, and then, look at it from a regional perspective. And so let me begin with this. As James said, I am co-chair of California Forward. For those of you who don't know California Forward, we're a nonpartisan governance reform organization. In our early years, we were very involved in political reform, redistricting reform, term limit reform, also in fiscal reform. We drafted the legislation that became the rainy day law in the state of California. We drafted the legislation that became enhanced financing districts and so on. An important thing for you to know about California Forward is that we look at every single policy with a triple bottom line perspective. How does this policy affect our economy? How does it affect our environment? And how does it affect opportunity for all of California in every region of California? If you look at it from that perspective, and you look at the state of California, you could say that with regards to the economy, we are doing well. We're the fifth largest economy in the world. Think about that. The economy of California is bigger than the economy of every other country in the world except for. Between 2014 and 2017, we were third in GDP growth among all the states in the United States. We're doing well. On the environmental front, I think the perception of many Californians is that we are environmental leaders. I think there is room for argument on that subject, but that's a subject for another meeting. It's a different debate. What is not open to debate is that on the third of those triple bottom lines, on the issue of opportunity for all Californians, we are doing miserably. It is a source of personal shame for me to reside in the Golden State when we have the highest rate of poverty in the United States. Our poverty rate, the U.S. poverty rate is about a little over 15%. In California, it's a little over 20%. In places like Fresno County, it is over 25%. 1 out of every 4 residents of our county lives in poverty. We absolutely have to fix that. And so in 2012, the California Forward launched what became an annual state economic summit focused on that question. Essentially, how did the California dream become a pipe dream for so many Californians, and how do we fix that? We have, every year, we assemble work groups to address components of that problem. We realize, by the way, that there is both an income and a cost dimension to this issue of lack of opportunity in California, lack of upward economic mobility. By the way, every single year since 2007, our income inequality the gap has increased. And so, you look at the income side, but you look at the cost side as well, because in the Bay Area, it's more an issue of cost than it is of income, right? I mean, people who are making $100,000 can't afford to make ends meet there. By the way, the James Irvine Foundation just issued a report last year that said that 47% of all working Californians struggle to make ends meet at the end of the month. That number in the San Joaquin Valley is 59%. 59%, 3 out of every people who reside in the San Joaquin Valley struggle to make ends meet. What that means is that they're either below the poverty level or that they cannot come up with $400 to meet an emergency expenditure. Well, broken fuel pump, a medical expense, leak in the refrigerator, they just don't have $400 saved up. So we've been doing this summit.
Can you say that again? 47% of Californians and 59% in the San Joaquin Valley are either on the poverty line or can't come up with $400.
That's correct.
To put into a savings account. So they are just on the razor's edge.
Yep. Yep. One paycheck away from, disaster. So, every year since 2012, we've been trying to address that issue. Every year we put together work groups that address dimensions of that issue. Every year, by the way, we invited Governor Brown to attend the State Economic Summit. He never showed up. But the Lieutenant Governor never missed a summit, except for the very last one, which was held in Sonoma, and that was a week after he was elected governor. He was a little busy at the time. But he did send a very nice letter and so on. And he did something else. He appointed the co-chair, my co-chair at California Forward, Lenny Mendoza, who's a native of the Valley, he's from Turlock. He appointed him as his chief business and economic development advisor. California Forward, as I mentioned, is a bipartisan organization. We have a Republican co-chair and a Democratic co-chair. Lenny is the Democrat, I'm the Republican. And we agree on 90% of the solutions that we need to implement in the Valley, in the state of California. And by the way, we agree on 100% if you include the 10% on which we agree to disagree. So, there are those issues that we just kind of put out in the parking lot and said, well, let's not talk about that. The governor is not just going to attend the summit, which, by the way, is going to be held for the first time ever in the San Joaquin Valley on November 7th and 8th, here at the DoubleTree. He's going to be here. Put that date down on your calendars. I'm going to urge you all to attend, because this is going to be one of the most historical things to happen in the San Joaquin Valley in a long time to come. Not only because he is attending, but because he has partnered with with California Forward on an initiative which he calls Regions Rise Together. Lenny Mendoza and his counterpart at the Strategic Growth Council, woman by the name of Kate Gordon, they wrote an op-ed, which I'm going to quote. It says, Governor Newsom came to office committed to making sure California for All is not just a slogan, but a strategy that results in sustainable and inclusive growth across the state. We believe that every region in California deserves a strong foundation for a sustainable future. We launched Regions Rise Together in partnership with California Forward, an organization that's already leading conversations on sustainable regional economic development. We expect our first progress report to come at their economic summit in November in Fresno. At that event, the governor will present the state's initial commitments to California's inland areas. So that initiative is specifically focused on the inland areas. Now, workforce development is going to be one of the big topics of conversation at the Economic Summit. It has been for some time. For some time, we've had some initiatives, including one that's called 1 million more skilled workers. But it's one of several initiatives. To just give you an indication of what we're talking about is there's probably 4 major topics that are going to be discussed. One of them is what we call regions of prosperity. How do we create more middle-income jobs in the regions that have been left behind? The second one is housing, connectivity, and mobility. The third is ecosystem vitality. We're going to focus primarily on water and forest resilience, forest management. The fourth is what we refer to as lifelong learning, which includes, of course, workforce development, but includes the entire spectrum, all the way from prenatal health to early learning, all the way through K-12, community colleges, 4-year colleges, and how to upskill, reskill incumbent workers. Let me just now turn to the San Joaquin Valley, and if I'm going to talk about workforce development in the San Joaquin Valley, the first thing I want to do is kind of help us understand, particularly for those of you who are not from the Valley, understand the unique challenges of the Valley. I'm not going to focus on all of them. I think it was, who was it? Einstein, who said, if I had 60 minutes to solve a problem, I spent the first 55 minutes understanding it, and the last 5 on solutions. But I only have 15 minutes, so I'm going to be quick. Number one, the mix of industries that we have is very challenging. Our mix of industries, more than 50% of our private sector jobs are in low-wage industries. That includes agriculture, it includes retail, includes hospitality industry. About a third of our jobs are in high-wage industries. That would be manufacturing, construction, some of the health occupations and so on, professional services. We don't have enough people to fill that 1/3 of the jobs in the private sector who are qualified. The balance, by the way, is in what the Brookings Institution calls opportunity jobs. Opportunity jobs like in e-commerce. You go to work for the Gap or Ulta or Amazon or an organization like that. Chances are your entry-level position is not going to pay family-sustaining wages, but it creates pathways to get you there. And so they're very, very important jobs for us in this community. The second major challenge that is very particular to the San Joaquin Valley is our topography. The fact that the good Lord had wanted to create the perfect space to entrap pollution, you could be done no better in the San Joaquin Valley. And that makes everything so much more difficult for us in the San Joaquin Valley. Since the 1980s, the private sector has invested more than $40 billion to upgrade equipment, mobile source, to reduce mobile source emissions, stationary source emissions, $40 billion. And that, of course, has also created displacement of economic activity. A lot of the value-added agriculture has left to other parts. I don't have time now. I'll give you some examples later in the Q&A if you're interested about how this has affected us, but it's a big deal. The third unique situation in the Valley, we share this with some other regions of the state, but certainly it's important over here, is our education level. In California, 18% of all Californians do not have a high school degree. In Fresno County, that number is 25%. In California, 33% of all, 33% of Californians have a BS degree. In Fresno, that number is 20%. We've got some really, really daunting challenges here that we have to address. So why is, by the way, let me, one other very quick statistic that I think is important for you to know. We have within just Fresno County, 97,000 people with some college credits, but no degrees. You know, if we could tap into that population and upskill them, that would have a huge impact on us. Important. Okay, so why is workforce development so important for us, particularly in the San Joaquin Valley? First, there's the low wage industries. The only way those low wage industries are going to be able to afford to pay more to their workforce is through increased labor productivity. And increased labor productivity involves not just investment in technology, but also investment in workforce skills. And so we've got to be completely committed to that. As far as the high wage industries, I've already said, we don't have enough jobs available to fill, skilled people to fill the available jobs. And we want more of those jobs. So, you know, our ambition to expand and to diversify into more of those high wage industries is going to be stymied if we don't, make major progress on workforce development. Let me end on what I hope you'll take as a very positive note. There is some great work going on today. The Cradle to Career Initiative in Fresno is doing outstanding work. In the last 3 years, we have improved third grade reading proficiency by 50%. Community college, Fresno City Community College, has increased its dual enrollment numbers from 300 3 years ago to 3,500 last year. Huge issues. And by the way, Fresno County CEO is sitting, with us, and I know Gene and the county have committed $110 million to put mental health professionals at every single one of the schools in Fresno County. I mean, there's some really, really great stuff going on. We just need to accelerate progress. Second thing is that, just like Sonoma, we've got some terrific CTE programs and some great high schools. If we could just do more of that, we would, really, really make great strides. I would put up our, heavy truck maintenance mechanic CTE program up against any program in the state. We ought to have a little competition, James, on programs in Sonoma and programs in Fresno. And in fact, everybody else should join in the competition. Let's put together some real kick-ass CTE programs throughout the state. And let me end up by saying Fresno State is a real asset to our community. Fresno State, has been ranked very, as one of the top 100 value universities in the United States by U.S. News and World Reports. Our kids are really benefiting from that education at Fresno State.
So, thank you, Supervisor Gore. Just kind of putting on my Health and Human Services hat kind of a little bit again as I recently transitioned to county administration. But we have 3 kind of unique programs that I wanted to highlight that we started in Tulare County a number of years ago, mainly for a lot of the reasons that Pete talked about, which was, A, we were having difficulty finding a lot of qualified individuals for entry-level jobs in the county itself. Office assistants, eligibility workers, those types of jobs. And at the same time, we identified needing to help our aging out foster youth get a start in life. And, because prior to the most recent legislation that's been in effect a couple of years, sort of 18, you were just like out. And that was the end of foster care. And so one of the programs that we had started was the Youth Transitions Program, where aging out foster youth through the independent living program would come into the agency. They have to have graduated high school. They have to have been over 18, so they have to meet the minimum requirements for the county's jobs. And then we would pair them in a HHSA setting with a supervisor and a mentor. And we would give them opportunities to have a job. We would pay them through sort of an extra help kind of position in the county structure. And at the same time they were working, they had to be pursuing some kind of educational opportunity, whether that was community college, career vocational, a four-year college, some kind of thing, because we didn't want them to just be sort of stuck in the entry-level world. So we started that program, I think it's going on about 15 years now, where that we take a group of individuals and we employ them in the county as extra help or as trainees in our Health and Human Service agencies, sometimes in our library and sometimes in our parks. And we give them an actual job and we pair them in a mentor to teach them soft skills. And what kind of one of the unintended effects of that was it really has helped us build a workforce, because a lot of these individuals have come in, they have gotten grounded with the county family, they have finished education, whatever that was, and then they've been able to begin to progress within the county structure, whether that's to lead worker or to a supervisor or to something else like that. And it has been a great program for the foster youth who are aging out, as well as helping us to fill some of our entry-level jobs. About, I don't know how many years ago, but the Board of Supervisors developed, through their Step Up program, a sort of offshoot of that program called the #Lead, which is something similar, although at a smaller scale, that's partnered with our Workforce Investment Department, but it's for any at-risk youth and not just means-tested individuals. So it allows other individuals, young people, who have getting a rough start in life to try to come into that program, get some mentoring, get a subsidized job, and then hopefully move into a better job. And then one of the third things that we've kind of done over the last 5 years is, one of the things we identified was, as many of you probably with your Health and Human Service or departments of behavioral health, is you have this ongoing cost of recidivism of your mental health, of your severely and persistently mentally ill individuals coming in through treatment, getting treatment, going out, and then either they're not getting opportunities for jobs, or they're decompensating back into the system, which then requires hospitalization, etc. So we started a peer support specialist program, where with the support of our county HR and the Board of Supervisors, which we actually have a job class called Peer Support Specialist that we pay, and I know these are throughout the state as well, but we pay the individuals to come in and kind of give them a second start who are in treatment and have recovered the persistent mental illness. So for us, that has also given us another opportunity to not only help individuals stay out of the system and save money, but it's also helped us to train qualified workers and to get them into the workforce, whether it be in the county system or whether it be a private employer, or a lot of times they went on to work for some of the private mental health therapy kind of programs, so that these individuals become contributors back to the economy in the local area. So those are sort of three kind of, not necessarily unique, but just three programs that has really worked for Tulare, that has helped us not only help someone in their circumstance come out and give them maybe a better start in life, but has also helped the county and some of the local employers fill some of their entry-level jobs. And so if you know your Health and Human Service agencies, a lot of your social services departments, and you guys all know this, they can really be some economic engines for your counties if you really leverage some of their programs. And of course, one of our big subsidized employment providers is also the one-stop provider for our county. So it helps us to co-enroll people into workforce investment, and it spreads the funds and gets people into training. But youth transitions has been a very popular program. We've trained, I would say, probably virtually almost 1,000 or more youth through that program over the last 15 years. And it has really been a win-win for the young person coming out of foster care, and then for the county as well, because in a lot of our entry-level jobs, we get those individuals and we're able to put them to work. Because we struggle in Tulare even just to get office assistants, not even to worry about the others. and so that fills that gap in that need.
Let me ask you a quick follow-up question, Jason. You talked about the program. Talk to us about the numbers. How many employees do you have total, as you've seen in the last 3 to 5 years with these programs? What kind of numbers have we seen? Is this in the tens? Is this in the hundreds? where are we at?
Sure, that's a great question. So our HHSA agency has about 2,100 employees altogether. With youth transitions, unfortunately I don't have all the numbers right in front of me, but I know we have trained hundreds and hundreds. There's at least a cohort of 25 to 30 sort of every couple of months starting through the cycle. I mean, it's something that happens quite often. Our hashtag lead's a little smaller. There's about 25 or 20 per class per year, because that's an intensive, they not only do they get, before they get a subsidized work experience placement, they have to go through like a series of 10 sort of seminars to prepare for work, to get leadership skills and those kinds of things. And then our peer support specialists, that's been a newer program that's only been around for a few years, but we've seen a lot of, at least 10 to 20 individuals who have left that system and went on to become other employed individuals. I know Ampelio works with a lot of those individuals through his work, and he'll talk about that too. But so it's real numbers. They're small, but you know, in my world, every dollar and every person, you know, everything counts. So
the unique thing that I'm taking from this is that, you know, for somebody who's already embedded into the public system as a black eye, do you know what I mean by that? It's like if you've grown up and you're seen by your peers and your community as having been a part of the system, that's not a good thing. But it's using the system to then justify them on the other side. So I can imagine the cohorts are for people who go directly into the service, but then they can also show somebody that they did this program if they're going out into the private sector. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. You know, it gives people a job on their resume. You know, we all know you can get another job when you know, easier when you have a job, and so it gives them that. But most of all, it gives them the confidence that they can do it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these individuals have been, you know, in the system, and they've been difficult, and they maybe even felt like they would never be self-sufficient. And it gives them that confidence and that encouragement to that they can do it and they will do it. And it's been a real good economic driver. And I mean, from a CAO perspective, it's all cemented dollars, so it doesn't cost anything. You know, just get them out there and work on it. So again, it's been a good program, and we're happy that it's helped to fill that gap. And a lot of our youth transitions have went on. We've had some that have graduated from law school who are now serving counties elsewhere in the state. We have individuals who have went on to engineering jobs because they graduated from Fresno's engineering program. So they don't all stay with us, but it gives them a start.
Well, I thank you for sharing. Remind us the name of the program or the sub-programs as a part of it if we want to look it up or think about spreading the news with other CSAC partners.
So they're listed as the Youth Transitions Program on our website, our hashtag LEAD, L-E-A-D program, and then of course the peer support specialists are probably in all counties because that's a special fund, but every county kind of sets them up differently.
Money doing public good. We have a program that was formed before I became a supervisor. It's called Sonoma County Youth Ecology Corps. So on one side, you can create those kind of jobs for at-risk youth in the, let's say, health and human services world, where we have a lot of opportunities and other things. But this is a program that kind of builds upon, you know, the California Conservation Corps. And we have partners with Social Advocates for Youth and other organizations that do direct service to homeless youth. And we pay them to do ecosystem management and ecosystem service cleanup work, about $13.80 an hour, and get them out there on the ground and doing supervised work and doing it very effectively. It's been a huge success for us, because oftentimes what you find as well is that trying to do cleanup work and other things, you can't always find it. And then so you can get somebody some work, and so if they're in one way interested in an office job and in working in a health and human services world and in a government public world, but on the other side you can get them outdoors, right? So be interesting to think how those can be deployed to have kind of a multi-pronged approach to it. We're going to go now over to Leanne Eager. Leanne, thank you for joining us. President, CEO. President and CEO. I always wonder which, you know, is better or worse or indifferent.
Any given day.
Yeah. When I got elected, my brother looked at me and said, I just want you to remember, Jimmy, that supervisors in my job are 2 levels below me. I'm a director. We are fortunate enough to have Leanne here. Thank you so much. You're the CEO. You've been there since 2009. Attorney by trade, co-chair of the California Central Valley Economic Development Corporation, and a member of the California International Trade and Investment Council. Also on the California Workforce Development Board. So you're in all of this. So, one of the things you and I talked about before we came up here too is this youth disconnection rate and like where things are at in our area. So a lot of this probably rings true to you, so look forward to hearing what you have to say. Finishing it up after you is going to be Ampelio. Ampelio, I'm really excited to have it be not from the organizational side, but from the community side, for you to talk to about new media, arts, and other things, how those are pulling people out as well. So we'll introduce Ampelio here in a minute, but Leanne, let's see if your clicker works.
So thank you. Yes, I'm Leanne Eager with the Economic Development Corporation. I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here. As you said, I was a attorney by trade. So we have a recovering politician back there and a recovering attorney working on economic development together. Sometimes that's a little scary. But when I first started at the EDC in 2009, I had come from being a bankruptcy attorney representing lenders in bankruptcy court and went to economic development. 2009, we know what that is, right? Right smack dab in the middle of the recession. I don't know what I was thinking on either side. But when I first got there, really the focus was on just retaining our businesses. It was, how do we stay alive? How do we keep our businesses alive during this recession? So we had a team of 8 at that time. Attraction, we did a little bit. You can see that up there. You have to have the expansion, attraction, retention. But really it was on retention. So the majority of my staff were out working with local businesses, seeing what we could do, what kind of incentives we could give in order to keep those businesses in Fresno County. We have moved on now. There are 22 of us, and we're working on all of those things. Well, one of the things that I had found over these last 10 years, I have the privilege of being go out around the country, around the world, and selling the Central Valley and selling Fresno to everyone to tell them that this is the place that they need to come and bring their business. Well, that door kept slamming in my face over and over again. You don't have a trained workforce. I would love to bring my business to the Central Valley, but you don't have a trained workforce. And so we looked at it and said, okay, that can't be right. We know we have high unemployment. We know we have people that want to work. Why is it that we can't join those two together? And so what we looked at was, let's do the data first. Let's make sure that we know what we're talking about when we go out and talk to those companies. Let's have that background that shows, here's what we have, here's what we need, and here's how we can put that together. So we hired an economist on staff. I have a young gentleman that every day comes and tells me, here's the direction you need to go in, here's who you need to go after, and here's the proof that you can give them to tell them why they need to come to your community. So, here's what he did for me. He put up the rankings. He said, here's where we are in Fresno County. Here's the highest chance of putting people to work with these particular industries. So obviously construction is right at the top. We have manufacturing up there, professional services. So with that information, we say, okay, now what do we do? Now I have this information. It's telling me I need to go after these folks. What do I do? Well, I need to train people. I need to make sure that when I go knocking on that door to that company and they say, you don't have a trained workforce, I'm gonna say, oh yes I do. And here's how we do that. So we put together with our folks at the County of Fresno, and I will have to be blunt about this. In 2014, I was at a convention, and the then county DSS, the head of DSS, he and I were drinking, and which is how these things happen, right? And after I think 2, maybe 3 glasses of wine, we thought we were both absolutely brilliant. And so we came up with this idea that the County of Fresno and the Economic Development Corporation should join forces, and we would bring the business to the table, they would bring the people to the table, we would let them know exactly what that business needs, in order to train these folks to have these jobs, and let's do a partnership. Well, of course, the next day, a little bit of a headache, we said, oh man, it was a great idea, but now we have to do it, right? Because we told all those people at that convention that we were going to do that. So we put the NEO program together, the Ready to Hire program. And the way that this works is that we bring the business to the table, as I said. There are 13,000 people on the Welfare to Work program in Fresno County that need jobs. And so what we said was, let's do a dating website. So my business is put in, here's what the job is. Department of Social Services trains people to do soft skills, gets them at least ready to hire, and gets those resumes into that dating website. It automatically matches them up. And that business gets that notice that says, here's the 40 people that match exactly what it is you need. But then they don't go from there. Now it comes back to my staff to make sure that that business is legit. We do all that pre-work, we do all that vetting. We make sure that they're ready for these folks, so we do that business side. We make sure that those folks who are applying for those jobs know exactly what they're getting into. We have job fairs ahead of time. Here's what that job's gonna be like. Here's what you need to do in order to get there. And then we do the matchmaking. Well, what the employer also gets, because they're hiring out of that welfare to work pool, is the first 3 months of employment, they get 100% reimbursement of that person's salary. The next 3 months, they get 75% reimbursement. And the reason for that is it might take a little more work to get these folks up to the place that they need them to be. But the most important piece that we added to it is the retention piece. Because it does not help to put people to work if they don't stay in the job. And that was one of the things that we worked on with the county from day one. We had asked them. So before we came along, and you put some people into jobs, how long did they stay? Because if we're gonna work on making this better, we need to know what those statistics are. They didn't have those numbers. They didn't know how long people stayed. They knew they got jobs, but they didn't know how long they stayed or why they left. So we hired a whole team of folks now who just do retention and work with those businesses and make sure that if someone gets hired out of this pool and maybe every Tuesday they're late to work, well, let's figure out why. Maybe it's Tuesdays, they don't have daycare. And we take that back to the county and say, we need to find something for them on Tuesday so they don't lose their jobs. We work with those businesses to say, you need to make sure you keep them, and we're gonna work with you in order to keep them so that we have that retention.
Leanne, where do the funds come for the reimbursements? When you say like you help somebody, you're moving them from welfare to work.
Right.
How do you transition that welfare money as a subsidy to be able to prove that
Right.
it's worthwhile?
And that comes through the county, through the state of California.
Great, thank you.
So and you can see the slide just before that. We just won last year the International Economic Development Council's Gold Award. And this was for this particular program because of the partnerships that we had made over the last couple of years. So the International Economic Development Council is economic developers from around the world. And you come together every year and you talk about the wonderful things that people are doing. I know it was an international award because we got the gold award and the folks from New Zealand got the silver award. I'm not sure what they were doing there. But we were very proud that it was a county of Fresno and economic developers coming together to design this. So, and as I said, here's what that program is. And I can tell you, those numbers that we're talking about, and then the welfare to work population that we're talking about, getting people off welfare and into good paying jobs, into careers, not just jobs. Across the country, we were told that that retention rate is about 48%. If you can get people working, about 48% will stay long term. Well, so far, this has been going on for about 4 years now. Our retention rate is around 82%. In the welfare to work field, it's 82% in Fresno County. And that's because of this partnership. That's because you have people on this side working to keep the people trained and ready to go. We have people on this side working with the companies saying, You need to help us too in making sure that they stay in those jobs and then they rise in those jobs. We want to make sure once they're in there that they also have that opportunity to go up in the company and get better jobs, get good paying jobs. So here's what we have done since we started this program. So we have about 300 businesses that are registered, and this is in the subsidized employment. We have a lot of employers that don't, they still hire out of that pool, but they don't do the subsidized employment for one reason or another. We have about 1,500 people that we have employed in the subsidized program. So I can talk a little bit also about what we do on specialized training.
Yeah, before you go there real
Yes.
quick, I want to dive into one of these
Sure.
areas. So, looks like a fantastic program. I was going to ask you about the numbers. What is on the supplier demand? What is holding this back from being, this is like, oh, you got an A, now how do you make it an A+?
Sure.
And I'm sure you guys are asking yourselves that question. So, if 1,600, what is holding it back from being 4,000? Is it the folks on the welfare to work program who aren't coming in? Is there more demand from the employers, or the employers, is it uptick in offering the jobs from that side?
And that's a good question, because that is what we've been working on.
Uh-huh.
Is what do we need to do in order to bring these numbers up? And it's both.
Great.
It's both. So in working with the businesses, we have been doing a lot more outreach now, because there has been a stigma attached in previous years about businesses in our community saying, I tried that 6-7 years ago, didn't really work, that population doesn't really work for me. So we had to rebrand it, right? We had to talk about the title of our program is Ready to Work, Ready to Hire. Because what we really are selling is that this is a whole new population of people that have been trained now, that are ready to work, and that you do have a whole group of people from the economic development side and the county side that are working together to ensure that when you hire people out of this pool, that they will be successful. So we're doing it on that piece. We actually hired another business specialist at our office that's just focusing on that. She's just going out, talking to our businesses about this NEO program, about what it is that they need to do in order to hire folks. On the other side, we're working with the county, with the Department of Social Services, about making sure that they offer a lot of different opportunities to the people that they're working with. Because I think originally they thought, well, we have a lot of people who aren't really interested in the jobs that you have available. So we've been going out as an economic development team and talking to them and telling them about the exciting part of the jobs that we have available. So when you say, okay, do you want to work on construction? And you have somebody actually go, not really, that wasn't really something I wanted to do. But then when we take them out and show them what kinds of construction we're talking about, when we take them out and show them about being a truck driver and what does that really mean if you get trained for those kinds of jobs, now we're building that pipeline on that other side too. So we're doing more partnerships on that.
Great. Thank you.
So let me tell you a little bit about the training real fast. I'm getting towards the end of my time, but I get too excited. So at one point we said, okay, let's really look at these jobs. What is it that we really need to fill? Well, one of our economic development friends is owner of a trucking company. And some of you might know John Lawson, kind of an old curmudgeon. And he said, I would hire folks out of that. I want to get some more contracts, but I need people trained the right way. And I said, okay, well, how many people do you think we could put into truck driving if we did a training? And he said, well, I'd hire 40 on the spot if you have them. And I said, well, how about bringing in some of your other colleagues and let's talk about how many jobs there are. Well, we only had about 10 show up one day. Of those 10, we had 200 jobs available that day in truck driving. And I said, how come you're not hiring them? And they said, well, we don't have enough trained people in order to hire them. So we went to the county and said, are you kidding me? We have 200 jobs ready today. Let's pay for the training. Let's put people that are in the welfare to work program through the training and get them jobs. Well, we are now on cohort number 32. We have trained people through that process. Those truck driving companies helped us tweak the curriculum so that it was the people they wanted and it was the training that they wanted. And of just that program, we have placed over 89% of the people that go through it, and the retention rate of that is 85%. The first cohort that we had was a gentleman, oh, Jean knows I always cry when I tell the stories, I'm sorry. He was in the first cohort, and he'd been on well for a long time. And he said, I'll try it, I guess I'll try it. And so he went through it. And he graduated, and John Lawson actually hired him from the very beginning. And he came at the graduation, and he gave a little talk at graduation, and he said, I never thought my children would be able to see me get off the couch. I never thought my children would be able to see that I actually have a career. And he said, this wasn't really just for me, this was for my little boys, to see that we had this possibility. We could actually do this. That gentleman now owns his own trucking company, and he only hires out of our program.
That's great.
So, I'm sorry. Anyway, he's just one story. He's just one story out of many that we're looking at. We also have a construction training. And we're on, I think, cohort number 16 in the construction, Valley Apprenticeship Connection. One of our cohorts in construction, we're all gang members. And they were all rival gang members. And what our community said was, we need to get gang members out of gangs. And so can we teach them a skill? And so we went to the Valley Apprenticeship Connection and said, can we put them through a separate cohort, get them trained, and get them on jobs? That training started at 7 a.m. Every single one of those young men were there by 6 o'clock in the morning. Every single one. And for two reasons. They wanted to make sure that they were there on time and they didn't have transportation, so they took the bus. But the other reason was they didn't want to see their fellow gang members see them coming to that training, because they wanted to make sure that they could get out of the training and into jobs without that outside influence. So of the 11 that went through the training, 10 graduated, and all 10 are working. None of them are in gangs anymore. And so that's the goal of what it is we're doing here. We're thinking outside the box. We're making sure that people who really need those jobs the most are getting them. And I do want to thank my county friends over here for supporting that effort. To really thinking about let's not do things the same old way that we always did, because we keep going back to high unemployment, high poverty. We can't quite get ourselves out of here. These are those kinds of things that do change the narrative for all of us. Okay.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Round of applause. Okay. Now you got to bring it home, man. It's time. Let's see this. Okay, so we got Ampelio Mejia Perez. Ampelio currently serves as general manager of the Arts Consortium and My Voice Media Center. Grew up in Porterville in Tulare County, lived the majority of his life in the Central Valley. He returned to this area after college to work as a paralegal and a brief writer for a local nonprofit while doubling as a community arts director. My Voice Media Center is a collaboration between the Arts Consortium and the Tulare County Health and Human Services Agency Mental Health Branch. Provides art instruction for adults and their support base who have lived with mental illness. This is good stuff. Ampelio, jump in and take us on a ride.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Gore, and thank you all for having me here. I'm really honored to be here. I represent the Arts Consortium in Tulare County, but really I'm here talking about creativity and the arts in general throughout California, and hopefully where we can go in the future. I actually have most experience in the nonprofit sector. I started in about 2010, and at around that time, IBM surveyed 1,500 CEOs from across the world, and they all voted that creativity was the most important workplace capability to help them survive and grow. And that alone should kind of get the tone for where I think we should go. One of the most prominent tools for arts organizations that I work with to measure our collective impact is the Otis College of the Arts Creative Economy Report, which it's an ongoing research project, but It defines creative industries as those which have the origin in individual creativity, skill, and talent, which have the potential for wealth and job creation through the generation and exploitation of intellectual property. So they break it down to talk about architectural and related services, creative goods and products, entertainment and digital media, fashion, and then fine arts and performing arts. So in the architectural and related services, obviously architecture, interior design, landscape design, and drafting services. Then with creative goods and products, we're talking about manufacture, warehouse import, and export of furniture, talking about textiles, talking about China and pottery producers, talking about industrial designers. Entertainment and digital media, we're talking about film publishers, broadcasting, emerging digital media, sound production, and recording. For fashion, we're talking about apparel design, manufacturing, wholesaling. Fine arts and performing arts, we're talking about the theater and dance companies, art galleries, music groups, performing arts companies, and museums. So those are the 5 different categories that they've broken down the global creative industry. And really there's a whole lot more that those can be broken down into. But basically what this goes to emphasize is how important education is, kind of like how my partners here were talking, but I'd like to focus on arts education, because really the skills, the creative problem solving that comes with our education, it's really valuable for children even when they go into fields that are not arts related. This creative problem solving, creative thought processing is really important, and like I said, it's become a really important part of 4,500 jobs. The creative industries are talking about 2.6 million jobs in California, creating $227 billion in labor income, 604 billion in annual output. Of those 2.6 million jobs, 1 million are actual directly employed in the creative industries, and 1.6 are indirectly created. So when there are events, if there's a food truck, if there's something needs to be constructed, then those are the indirect jobs that are being created. The Central Valley reportedly only represents about 1% of the total creative economy in California. So we have a lot of room to grow. We have a lot of room to grow. But it still means that we're producing billions of dollars in income. It's still billions of dollars. So that's very uplifting. In my county, in Tulare County, we are very thankful and fortunate that we have government who is really kind of forward-thinking, and they help small organizations like ours to stay afloat, because without them, we don't really have the chance to get a corporate or a large public donor, or a large private donor, sorry, because they just don't see us as someone viable to market their brand. They just don't. So in our area, we're really thankful for that kind of support. Same with partnerships with like the Tulare County Health and Human Services Agency, which increasing support along with the internet accessibility that empowers local agencies and artists to make a living producing artwork, whether they sell it locally or on a global market. We at the Arts Consortium in Tulare County, we're very lucky that we have this programming. So we have an annual festival, we have studio tours, we have monthly shows, and then we partner with organizations that put on other things like car shows and cultural celebrations to bring the community together and expose them to the arts. We really believe that the arts can make a difference. We train individuals not only in membership meetings, so we provide marketing support, but we also teach them how to market themselves. Some people don't realize that if you have a product, even if it's amazing, that you can't really sell it if you don't try to sell it. So we go from presentation to actual personal interactions with their clients. Then that was the individual basis, but then on an organizational basis, we help train startup organizations to do anything from gang prevention through art, taking art back into schools, literature programs like the Poetry Out Loud program, that's a whole national program, but we take a small part of it. Theater programs, so some organizations don't have any idea what it means to put together a mission statement or have any kind of bylaws. So we help them do that, make sure that we take over provide them with an umbrella, we provide them with insurance, we provide them with bookkeeping services, we provide them with, again, these kind of support services and help them grow. At the moment, we have 2 organizations who have already graduated into their own 501c3s, which is one is the Urbanist Collective and the other one is the Visalia Opera Company. The Urbanist Collective is one of these gang prevention organizations that help take kids who are probably already causing some type of damage and tells them that what they're doing is actually art and they don't have to cause damage to public property. They can instead take that and express freely in a public setting without putting themselves or anyone else in danger and actually make some money off of it. We also are very lucky, this is where the Health and Human Services Agency comes in because we partner with them for the My Voice Media Center, which also incorporates the peer support system that Jason was talking about. We take adults who have struggled with mental illness or their support base because we realize that sometimes family isn't really the best support base. So we take their support base and we train them in the arts in whatever they want. It ranges from printmaking to dance to guitar to singing to, I mean, whatever we have available at the moment and whatever they really want. If they tell us that they want to do tie-dye, then we set it up so that they can do tie-dye, whether it's learning or teaching. So the end goal on this is to get them to express themselves. Sometimes they'll come in and they can't even talk. They'll come in with their significant other or they'll come in with a parent and they cannot talk. They really cannot talk. Then they will go into a session and start making some art. We'll just, with hopefully a very welcoming environment, we'll encourage them to tell us what they're thinking, to tell us what they're processing, why they're making the decisions that they're making. Then all of a sudden they're talking to people, they're going out on field trips, they're hanging out outside of the work, they're trying to share their work during actual art shows. And then we have a few participants who have actually become professional artists now. They're going out and making videos, they're taking photographs, they are selling their prints and pictures on local markets. So those are partly what we do. And then the No Stigma Speakers Bureau is again trying to double up on this idea that we've already got them in here, we've already got them talking. Now let's see if we can get more people to see what they're doing. And we disguise it as the art of public speaking, but really it's getting them to become more self-confident in themselves, to use their own story to let people know, hey, you know what? 1 in 4 of us has been touched by mental illness. And that's the United States. That's not just Tulare County. In the United States, 1 in 4 people are touched by mental illness. And so we get people who are experts in it because they've lived it, because they've experienced it, because their families lived it, to share with everyone else and bring more people together. So again, this is really only the tip of the iceberg. You know, if 1% of the creative economy is happening in the Central Valley, and we're able to see the change that we can do, imagine if we were putting out more like 20%. How many more people could we be reaching? How many more people could we be actually helping and getting back into the workforce? So, that's
Round of applause, thank you guys. The thing I wanted to ask is the numbers a little bit, not in a judgment this way or that way, but like what kind of, you talked about the different programs, I've asked everybody, what kind of, how do you do it? Do you have consortiums? Do you have people come in? Do you have a quarterly setup? Do you work on the fly? And how's it going?
So we have about 24 different organizations that we work with. We have about a dozen arts organizations specifically that we work with throughout the county, and we promote all of our services. They're cross-promote actually. We have about a membership, for just our organization, we have a membership of about 250 people. And for the My Voice Media Center itself, we have regulars coming in about 50 people per month. We have regular 50 people. Total, we have about 500 registered participants there. So, but again, we wouldn't be able to do this without support from everybody like here in the room.
Fantastic. I want to thank everybody. So we have Pete over on the side, Pete Weber, talking about basically in the gears, trying to rebuild the mechanism and move the gears around. We have Jason saying, own your link in the chain, right? Like if you have employees and you can do this, don't just create an ideal setting or a theory or a policy, actually build a program. We have Leanne talking about, for me, really filling the gaps and connecting the dots. A lot of the biggest innovation that we need in our communities is connecting the damn dots and figuring out where the data and how it's done. And Ampelio, what I really love about this is it's like the flavor. It's like the sabor. It's like the, it's not just like the boring jobs conversation. It's like, how do we get people into the new economy? How do we bring them in, get them excited? How do we convert people who play video games into digital designers, right? So this panel is all about, as Pete Weber said, kicking ass, and as I said, getting shit done. So GSD and KA, and thank you all very much. Round of applause for our folks.